The clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m. when Maya finally wiped down the last table in the corner. Her feet were killing her, not the kind of pain that goes away after you sit down for 5 minutes. This was the deep, bone-tired ache that comes from standing for 11 hours straight. She bent down to pick up a napkin someone had dropped under table 12. Her lower back protested. 28 years old, and some days she felt like she was 50. This wasn't how things were supposed to turn out. The Riverside Bistro was one of those fancy places where people celebrated anniversaries and closed business deals. White tablecloths, actual cloth napkins, servers who knew which fork was for salad without having to think about it. Maya had worked there for almost 2 years now, and she knew every inch of that dining room. Every scuff mark on the hardwood floor. Every slight wobble in table 7 that you had to warn customers about unless you wanted wine spilling everywhere. Tonight had been busier than usual. Some kind of private event in the main dining room. 30 guests, maybe 35. The kind of people who ordered the most expensive items on the menu without looking at the prices. Maya had smiled through the whole thing. Brought out plates. Refilled water glasses. Pretended she couldn't hear when one guy snapped his fingers at her like she was a dog. Most of the guests had moved into the lounge area now, settling into the leather chairs with their after-dinner drinks. That meant Maya could finally start cleaning up. She grabbed her gray cleaning bin and moved from table to table, stacking plates carefully so nothing would chip. The restaurant paid for broken dishes out of your paycheck. She'd learned that lesson the hard way in her first month. The dining room was quieter now. Just the soft clink of dishes and the muffled sound of conversation from the lounge. Maya actually liked this part of the shift. When the chaos settled and it was just her and the work. No one asking for extra sauce or complaining that their steak wasn't cooked right. She was carrying a tray of dirty glasses toward the kitchen when something caught her eye. The piano. It sat in the corner near the window, right where it always did. A beautiful black grand piano that probably cost more than Maya made in 2 years. Maybe 3. The thing was mostly for decoration. Sometimes on Friday or Saturday nights, Mr. Chen hired someone to play during dinner service. Soft jazz or classical stuff that wouldn't interrupt conversations, but made the place feel more elegant. Made people willing to pay $45 for a piece of salmon. But tonight the piano was silent. Maya had overheard Mr. Chen on the phone earlier, clearly frustrated. The regular pianist had called in sick. Food poisoning or the flu or something. Whatever it was, it meant the guests at tonight's private event weren't getting the live music they'd been promised. Maya stopped walking. She stood there in the middle of the dining room, tray of glasses in her hand, staring at that piano. She hadn't touched a real piano in months. Couldn't remember the last time, actually. There was a small keyboard in her apartment, something she'd bought secondhand from a pawn shop. 61 keys instead of 88. Some of the keys stuck. The middle C made a clicking sound that drove her crazy, but it was better than nothing. On her days off, when her neighbors weren't home, she'd practice for an hour or two, just to keep her fingers from forgetting everything they'd learned, because Maya hadn't always been a waitress. That wasn't supposed to be her story. She pushed the thought away and kept walking toward the kitchen. The past was the past, no point dwelling on it. Tommy was at the dish station spraying down plates with the industrial hose. He was 16, saving up for a car, and he treated dishwashing like it was some kind of Olympic sport. The kid had energy Maya couldn't even remember having. "Big party tonight," he said over the sound of running water. "Yeah." Maya set the tray down. "Should be decent tips at least. You see that lady at table 8? The one with all the rings? Hard to miss her. She asked me where the bathroom was and then tipped me $5 for telling her where the bathroom was. Rich people are weird." Maya smiled despite herself. No argument here. She headed back out to the dining room. 2 more tables to clear, and she could start setting up for tomorrow's lunch service. Her shift didn't officially end until 11, but if she worked fast, she might get out by 10:30. That's when she saw Mr. Chen. He was standing near the entrance to the lounge, looking stressed. His tie was slightly crooked, which was unusual. Mr. Chen was normally the kind of person who kept every single thing perfectly in place. Tie straight, hair combed, smile ready. But right now he looked tired. Maya had been working for him long enough to know when something was bothering him, and she had a pretty good guess what it was. She hesitated, then walked over. "Everything okay?" He looked up, seeming surprised to see her. "Oh, Maya, yes, everything's fine, just—" He glanced toward the lounge. "The guests keep asking about the piano music. I've apologized 3 times already, but you know how it is. People pay good money for an evening here. They expect everything to be perfect." Maya nodded. She understood. In places like this, every detail mattered. That's what people were paying for. The whole experience. I even called 2 other pianists I know. Mr. Chen continued. "But it's Friday night. Everyone's already booked." Her heart was beating faster now. There was something she could do. She knew it. But the question was whether she should. It had been so long since she'd played for anyone but herself. So long since she'd sat at a real piano, not that cheap keyboard in her apartment. What if her fingers didn't remember? What if she messed up? What if people laughed? But then she thought about Mr. Chen, who'd given her this job when she really needed it. Who let her pick up extra shifts when rent was due. Who'd never once made her feel bad about being overqualified to carry plates. "I could play something," she heard herself say. Mr. Chen blinked. "What?" "The piano. I could play. Nothing fancy. Just some background music so the evening isn't completely quiet." He stared at her like she'd just told him she could juggle fire. "You play piano?" "I used to. I mean, I still do, kind of. I'm pretty rusty. But I know enough to get through some basic songs." That was putting it mildly, but she didn't want to oversell herself. Better to set expectations low. Mr. Chen's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked like hope. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to put you on the spot." "It's fine, really. I'm on break anyway. Might as well do something useful." He looked at the piano, then back at her. She could see him weighing the options. A waitress playing piano wasn't exactly professional. But it was better than nothing. And the guests were already disappointed. "Okay," he said finally. "If you're comfortable with it, just keep it simple. Background music. Nothing that will draw too much attention." "I understand." Maya walked toward the piano before she could change her mind. Her hands were shaking slightly. This was crazy. She should be finishing her cleaning. She should be thinking about the bus ride home and whether she had enough leftovers in the fridge for tomorrow. But her feet kept moving forward. And when she reached the piano bench, she sat down. The keys were smooth under her fingers. Real ivory, probably, or something expensive meant to look like it. She took a breath, just something simple, something easy, something that wouldn't make anyone notice her too much. She began to play. The first notes came out softer than Maya expected. Her fingers felt stiff, nervous. Like they weren't quite sure they remembered how to do this anymore. She chose something simple. A melody most people would recognize but wouldn't really pay attention to. The kind of song that floats through a room without demanding anything from anyone. Perfect for background music. Her left hand found the bass notes while her right hand carried the melody. The muscle memory was still there, buried under months of not playing on a real piano. It felt strange. Good strange. Like running into an old friend you hadn't seen in years. From where she sat, Maya could see into the lounge area. The guests were still talking, laughing, holding their wine glasses. Nobody had noticed yet that the music had started. That was fine. That was exactly what Mr. Chen had asked for. She kept playing, letting her fingers warm up. The song was easy enough that she didn't have to think about it too much. Her mind wandered while her hands moved on their own. She thought about the first time she'd ever touched a piano. She'd been 6 years old. Her elementary school had an old upright piano in the music room, and her teacher had let kids mess around with it during indoor recess. Most kids banged on it randomly, making noise just for fun. But Maya had been fascinated by the fact that each key made a different sound, that you could press them in certain orders and suddenly it wasn't noise anymore. It was music, her mom had noticed. Started saving up. It took almost a year. But eventually they got Maya a small keyboard and signed her up for lessons with a teacher who lived 3 blocks away. Mrs. Park. She was strict, but patient. And she believed Maya had something special. By the time Maya was in high school, she was spending every spare moment at the piano, while other kids were at football games or hanging out at the mall. She was practicing scales and working through complicated pieces that made her hands cramp. She didn't mind. She loved it. There was something about music that made sense to her in a way nothing else did. Her teachers said she had real talent. Not just decent or pretty good. Real talent. The kind that could take her somewhere. So Maya applied to music conservatories, good ones. The applications cost money her family didn't really have, but her mom insisted. This was Maya's shot. She got accepted to 3 schools. 3. Maya still remembered the day the first acceptance letter came. She'd cried right there in the kitchen while her mom hugged her so tight she could barely breathe. The conservatory was everything she'd dreamed of, surrounded by other musicians, access to practice rooms with beautiful grand pianos, teachers who'd performed all over the world. For the first 2 years, Maya felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Then her dad got sick. The diagnosis came out of nowhere. Cancer, the kind that moves fast. Suddenly there were hospital bills and treatment costs, and her mom trying to work 2 jobs, while also being at the hospital every day. Maya had tried to keep going, tried to balance school and practice and weekend trips home to help out. But the conservatory was expensive. Even with her scholarship, there were costs. Books. She made it through her 3rd year. Barely. Then her dad died in October, and something inside Maya just broke. She took a leave of absence. Just for 1 semester, she told herself. Just to help her mom sort everything out, to grieve, to figure out what came next. That 1 semester turned into 2, then 3. Then suddenly it had been 2 years and Maya was working full-time at a restaurant because someone had to pay the rent. Her mom was doing better now, but the debt from the medical bills was crushing. Every month it was the same math: rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, debt payments. There was never anything left over. Never enough to even think about going back to school. So the piano became something she used to do. Past tense. A dream she'd had before life got in the way. Maya's fingers stumbled slightly on the keys. She'd gotten distracted, lost in her own head. She recovered quickly, but it reminded her to focus. This wasn't the time to get emotional. She was here to play some simple background music, nothing more. The song she was playing came to an end. Her hands lifted from the keys. She should probably play one more, she thought, just to give the guests a bit more ambiance. Then she could slip away, finish cleaning up, and hopefully Mr. Chen would throw a few extra bucks her way for helping out. But as her hands hovered over the piano, something shifted inside her chest. She'd been so careful these past few years, careful to keep the piano as just a hobby, something she did alone in her apartment where nobody could hear, where it was safe, where it couldn't remind her of everything she'd lost. But sitting here now at this beautiful instrument with her fingers tingling from even that simple song, something woke up. Something she'd been trying very hard to keep asleep. What if she played something else? Not background music. Not something safe and forgettable. What if just for a few minutes she played like she used to? When music was everything. When her hands could do things that made her teachers lean forward in their chairs. When she could lose herself completely in the sound. Her heart started pounding. This was stupid. Mr. Chen had asked for background music. The guests weren't here to watch a waitress show off. She should play another simple song and then get back to work. But her fingers were already moving. They found the opening notes of a piece she'd learned during her 2nd year at conservatory. A challenging piece. The kind that required both technical skill and emotional depth. The kind she used to play when she wanted to prove to herself that she was good enough to be there. The opening was deceptive. It started quietly, almost hesitantly, like a question being asked. Maya's right hand carried a delicate melody while her left hand provided soft, rolling accompaniment. She could feel the difference immediately. This wasn't background music. This was the kind of music that demanded attention. That pulled at something inside your chest. In the lounge, conversation started to fade. Maya noticed from the corner of her eye, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Her hands were remembering things she'd thought they'd forgotten. The piece began to build. The melody grew more insistent. Her left hand took on a stronger rhythm. This was the part where the question from the opening started to become something else, something more urgent. Maya's fingers moved faster now, dancing across the keys in patterns she'd practiced 1,000 times. Her hands knew this piece like they knew how to tie shoes or brush teeth. It was written into her muscle memory so deeply that no amount of time could fully erase it. The technical passages came naturally. Runs up and down the keyboard, jumps from bass to treble and back again, chords that required her to stretch her fingers as far as they would go. This was the kind of playing that looked impressive, but for Maya it was just what her hands did. What they were trained to do. She wasn't thinking anymore. Wasn't worrying about what people might think or whether this was appropriate. She was just playing. Really playing. For the first time in years, the lounge had gone almost completely quiet now. Maya was vaguely aware of this, but it felt distant, like something happening in another room. All that mattered was the music. The way it flowed from somewhere deep inside her chest, through her shoulders, down her arms, into her fingers, and out into the air. This was who she was, before the hospital bills and the grief and the exhaustion, before the double shifts and the aching feet and the life that wasn't supposed to be hers. This was Maya, the real Maya. The piece was reaching its climax now, the emotional peak. Her whole body was involved in the playing, leaning into the louder passages, pulling back for the softer moments, breathing with the music, and then suddenly it was over. The final chord rang out into the silence. Maya's hands stayed on the keys, fingers trembling slightly. The sound faded slowly, notes dissolving into air. For several seconds there was nothing, no sound at all. Maya's eyes were still closed. She was almost afraid to open them, afraid to come back to reality, to remember that she was a waitress in a stained apron who'd just done something incredibly foolish. What had she been thinking, playing like that, drawing all that attention to herself? Mr. Chen was probably furious. She might have just lost her job. Over what? Some stupid need to prove she was still a musician. She wasn't a musician anymore. That ship had sailed. Slowly, Maya opened her eyes, and that's when she heard it. Applause. It started with one person, then another. Then suddenly the whole room was clapping. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She turned on the piano bench, and what she saw made her stomach flip. Every single person from the lounge was standing near the entrance to the dining room. Some were actually in the doorway. Others had moved closer to the piano. They weren't just politely clapping either. These were real reactions. Some people had their hands pressed to their chests. One woman was wiping her eyes. "Oh my God," Maya whispered. Her face felt hot. Her hands were shaking. Mr. Chen stood near the back, his mouth slightly open. He looked as shocked as she felt. An older man in an expensive suit stepped forward first. He had gray hair and the kind of confident walk that came from years of people listening when he spoke. "That was extraordinary," he said. His voice was warm but serious. "Absolutely extraordinary. Thank you." Maya's voice came out smaller than she meant it to. She stood up from the bench, suddenly very aware that she was still wearing her work apron. There was a coffee stain near the bottom. Her name tag was crooked. A younger woman pushed forward, practically bouncing with excitement. "Where did you study?" "Juilliard, Curtis. You have to have formal training. Nobody plays like that without serious training. I studied at a conservatory for a few years, but I didn't finish." "You didn't finish?" The woman looked genuinely confused, like Maya had just said she stopped breathing halfway through. "Why not?" Maya felt her throat tighten. This was exactly why she didn't talk about this stuff. Life got complicated. I had to leave. More people were gathering around now. Maya felt trapped, cornered. The piano was behind her, and there were at least 15 people between her and the nearest exit. "That piece you played," an older woman with perfect posture said. "That's Rachmaninoff, isn't it? The second prelude in G minor?" Maya blinked. "You know it? My daughter's a pianist. She's been working on that same piece for months, but I've never heard it played quite like that." The woman's eyes were kind. "You made it sound like it was telling a story." "That's sort of the point," Maya said quietly. "Music is always telling a story. You just have to figure out what it is." "And what story were you telling us?" The question hit Maya harder than she expected. What story had she been telling? She thought about the past few years. The hospital rooms. The bills stacked on the kitchen table. The dreams she'd packed away in boxes. The keyboard in her apartment that wasn't good enough but was all she could afford. "I guess." Maya swallowed hard. "I guess I was telling a story about something beautiful that got lost, and about what it feels like to find it again, even if just for a moment." The room went very quiet. Then the gray-haired man spoke again. "What's your name?" Maya Torres." "Maya, I'm Robert Morrison. I'm on the board of the Riverside Performing Arts Center." He pulled out a business card from his jacket pocket. "We're always looking for talented musicians. Would you be interested in auditioning for some of our upcoming events?" Maya took the card with numb fingers. The Riverside Performing Arts Center. She knew the place. It was where real musicians performed. People with careers and agents and full concert schedules. I'm not really performing anymore. I just play for myself sometimes. Well, you should reconsider that decision, Robert said firmly. Talent like yours shouldn't be hidden away. Mr. Chen finally pushed through the small crowd. His expression was impossible to read. Maya braced herself. Here it came. The part where he told her she'd overstepped. That she was supposed to be working, not showing off, but instead he was smiling. Actually smiling, Maya, he said. Why didn't you tell me you could play like that? You never asked, she said, then immediately regretted how that sounded. I mean, it didn't seem important. I'm here to wait tables, not what? Not share an incredible gift? Mr. Chen shook his head. Do you know how long I've been trying to find a pianist who can really connect with people? Someone who doesn't just play notes but makes them feel something? Maya didn't know what to say to that. A middle-aged man with glasses spoke up. I'd hire you for my wife's birthday party next month. We're looking for someone to play during dinner. Name your price. I'll pay double whatever he's offering, someone else chimed in. We're having a fundraiser in 3 weeks. Maya's head was spinning. This was too much, too fast. 5 minutes ago, she'd been wiping down tables and thinking about the bus schedule. Now people were offering her money to play piano. Like she was a real musician. Like that was something she could actually do. I appreciate all of this, Maya said, holding up her hands. Really, I do. But I have a job. I work here. I can't just actually, Mr. Chen interrupted. He had that look on his face. The one he got when he was making a business decision. What if you did both? Maya frowned. Both? We could use a house pianist. Friday and Saturday nights to start. During dinner service, you'd still help with serving on the busier nights, but primarily you'd be here to play. He glanced at the guests who were all listening intently. Based on the reaction tonight, I think it would be very good for business. I don't know. The pay would be better, Mr. Chen added. Significantly better, plus tips. People tip musicians well here. Maya's mind raced. Better pay meant she could actually start making a dent in the debt. Maybe even start saving. But it also meant putting herself out there. Being visible. Playing for people who would judge every note. Can I think about it? She asked, of course. But don't think too long. Mr. Chen smiled. After tonight, word's gonna spread. I have a feeling you're going to get a lot of offers. Robert Morrison stepped closer again. Maya, I'm serious about that audition. We have a community showcase coming up in 2 months. It's a great opportunity for emerging talent. Would you at least consider it? I'll think about it, Maya said, though her brain was screaming that this was crazy. She wasn't emerging talent. She was a waitress who used to study music. There was a difference. The guests slowly started to disperse, heading back to the lounge or gathering their things to leave. But several of them stopped to shake Maya's hand or thank her again. One man pressed a $50 bill into her palm. That's not necessary, she tried to say. Yes, it is, he insisted. You made my evening. Hell, you made my whole week. When the dining room finally cleared out, Maya sank back onto the piano bench. Her legs felt like jelly. Tommy poked his head out from the kitchen. Dude, what just happened? Everyone's talking about you. I have no idea, Maya said honestly. Mr. Chen approached again, this time without an audience. You really are talented, you know. I meant what I said about the pianist position. Think about it seriously. After he walked away, Maya sat alone at the piano. The dining room was quiet again except for the distant sound of dishes being washed. She looked down at her hands. The same hands that had been carrying plates an hour ago. The same hands that hadn't performed for an audience in years. She touched the keys gently, not pressing hard enough to make sound. Just feeling the smooth surface under her fingertips. Something had shifted tonight. She could feel it. Like a door she'd thought was locked forever had suddenly creaked open just a crack. Light was spilling through, and Maya wasn't sure if she should walk toward it or push the door closed and go back to safety. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She pulled it out. A text from her mom. How was work tonight? Maya stared at the message. How was she supposed to answer that? She'd gone to work expecting another normal Friday night. Instead, everything had changed. She typed back. It was interesting. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Then she stood up, smoothed her apron, and went back to finish cleaning the dining room. Because no matter what had just happened, she still had a job to do. Tables to clear, floors to sweep, bills to pay. But Robert Morrison's business card was in her pocket, and for the first time in years, Maya let herself wonder what might be possible. Maya didn't sleep much that night. She kept replaying the evening in her head. the way her hands had felt on the piano keys, the sound of the applause. Robert Morrison's business card sitting on her nightstand, the phone number practically glowing in the dark. By the time her alarm went off at 7, she'd been awake for an hour, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince herself that last night had actually happened. Her mom called while Maya was making coffee. The cheap instant kind that tasted like hot water with a vague coffee suggestion. "So tell me about last night," her mom said. She sounded tired. She always sounded tired these days. Working at the medical supply company was wearing her down, but the insurance was decent and they needed that. Maya sat down at her tiny kitchen table. "I played piano at the restaurant." Silence on the other end. "Then you what?" "Their regular pianist got sick. Mr. Chen was stressed about it, so I offered to help. Just background music, you know. But then Maya trailed off, not sure how to explain what had happened. But then what? "I played for real. Like I used to. And people really responded to it. Mom, someone offered me money to play at a private event, and the guy who runs the Performing Arts Center wants me to audition." More silence. Maya could hear her mom breathing. "Sweetheart," her mom said finally, and Maya could hear the worry in her voice. "That's wonderful, really, but you have to be careful." "Careful of what?" "Of getting your hopes up. You remember what happened last time. How hard it was when you had to stop." Maya did remember. She remembered crying in her childhood bedroom surrounded by moving boxes. Remembered selling her good keyboard to help cover the funeral costs. Remembered feeling like someone had reached into her chest and pulled out something vital. "I know," Maya said quietly. "But Mom, what if this is, I don't know, a second chance?" "Second chances are great in movies. In real life, you still have rent to pay. You still have bills. Music doesn't put food on the table, Maya. We learned that the hard way." The words stung even though Maya knew her mom wasn't trying to be cruel. She was just being practical. Someone had to be. "Mr. Chen offered me a position as the house pianist," Maya said. "It would pay better than waitressing." "How much better?" Maya told her the number Mr. Chen had mentioned. She heard her mom let out a low whistle. "That's not bad. That's actually pretty good." "Yeah. So why do you sound like someone just told you bad news?" Maya picked at a scratch on the table. "Because I'm scared. What if I'm not good enough? What if last night was just, I don't know, a fluke? What if I take this job and mess up and then I don't have anything?" "You're always good enough, sweetheart." That was never the question. The question is whether the world is going to let you be the musician you want to be, and the world doesn't always cooperate. They talked for a few more minutes before her mom had to get ready for work. After they hung up, Maya sat at the table with her cold coffee and thought about fear. She'd been afraid for so long. Afraid of not having enough money. Afraid of letting her mom down. Afraid of wanting something she couldn't have. Fear had become so normal she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to want something more than she was scared of it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi Maya, this is Robert Morrison from last night. I wanted to follow up about the audition opportunity. Would you be available to meet for coffee this week to discuss? No pressure, just want to share some information." Maya stared at the message. She could ignore it. Pretend she never saw it. Go to work tonight, wait tables, keep her head down, safe, predictable, or she could write back. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. She thought about that moment at the piano when everything else had fallen away, and it was just her and the music. How alive she'd felt. "All right," she typed. "Coffee sounds good. I'm free Tuesday afternoon." Before she could second-guess herself, she hit send. The next few days moved fast. Too fast. On Saturday night, Maya played piano at the restaurant again. This time it was planned. She showed up in clean clothes instead of her server uniform. Though Mr. Chen insisted she keep the apron for now. "It's part of your story," he said. People love that. The dining room was more crowded than usual. Word had gotten around somehow. 2 people asked to take her photo. Someone recorded her on their phone. It felt surreal. Sunday she practiced for 6 hours straight on her crappy keyboard at home. Her fingers hurt and her back ached from sitting on her wobbly chair. But she needed to make sure she still knew what she was doing. That Friday night hadn't been luck. Monday morning. A local news blog posted a short article titled "Hidden Talent. Waitress wows diners with classical piano performance." Someone had recorded part of Friday night and shared it online. The video had been viewed 12,000 times. Maya felt sick when she saw it. This was getting out of control. Tuesday afternoon, she met Robert Morrison at a coffee shop downtown. The kind of place where coffee cost $7 and came with foam art on top. Robert was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with a folder in front of him. "Maya, thanks for meeting me." He stood up and shook her hand. "Can I get you something?" "Just a regular coffee, black." While he went to order, Maya tried to calm her nerves. This was just a conversation, nothing more. She didn't have to commit to anything. Robert came back with 2 cups and sat down across from her. "I'll get straight to it. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've heard hundreds of pianists. Thousands, probably. And what you did Friday night? That was special. I appreciate that, but let me finish." He opened the folder. The Performing Arts Center hosts a community showcase every quarter. It's a chance for emerging local artists to perform in front of a real audience. We get about 300 people typically. Local music teachers, students, community members, sometimes even scouts from bigger venues. He pulled out a flyer and slid it across the table. "The next showcase was in 8 weeks. I'd like to offer you a slot. 15 minutes. You'd play whatever you want. It's not paid, but it's exposure. And it's a start." Maya looked at the flyer. The venue was nice. A real concert hall with proper acoustics and seating. The kind of place she used to dream about performing in. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like that." "You played a complex piece perfectly after not performing for years. You made a room full of strangers stop talking and pay attention. That's not something you can teach. Either you have it or you don't. You have it, but I'm out of practice. I don't have access to a good piano. I can't afford to rent practice space. We have practice rooms at the center. You can use them for free. Anytime we're open." Robert leaned forward. "Maya, I'm not trying to pressure you, but opportunities like this don't come around often, especially for people who had to step away from music for life reasons. This could be a way back in, a way back in." The words echoed in Maya's head. "What if I'm terrible?" Maya asked quietly. "What if I get up there and freeze or mess up? What if everyone realizes I'm just a waitress pretending to be a musician?" Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that hit Maya right in the chest. "Or what if you're amazing? What if this is the moment your life changes? What if you're exactly as good as I think you are, and you're just too scared to find out?" Maya looked down at her coffee. The foam art had dissolved into a brown mess. She thought about the last few years. The hospital. The bills. The dreams she'd packed away. She thought about her keyboard with the sticky keys and the clicking C. She thought about how it felt to play on a real piano again, to lose herself in music the way she used to, and she thought about fear. How it had kept her small, kept her safe, but also kept her from becoming who she was supposed to be. "Okay," Maya heard herself say. Robert's eyebrows went up. "Okay, I'll do the showcase. I'll play." Her heart was pounding. "I don't know what I'm going to play yet. And I might completely bomb. But I'll do it," Robert smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes. "You won't bomb? Trust me." They talked for another 30 minutes about logistics, rehearsal schedules, what time she could access the practice rooms, how the showcase worked. When Maya left the coffee shop, the folder was in her bag and Robert's encouraging words were ringing in her ears. She pulled out her phone and called her mom. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay?" "I'm doing it, Mom, the audition." "Well, it's not really an audition, it's a showcase, but I'm performing. In 8 weeks. At a real venue." Her mom was quiet for a beat. "Then are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Her mom laughed. Actually laughed. "That's my girl. When did you get brave?" "I'm not brave. I'm terrified. Same thing sometimes." That night, Maya went to the Performing Arts Center for the first time. Robert met her at the door and showed her to the practice rooms. Small soundproof spaces with upright pianos. Not the fancy grand pianos in the concert hall, but real instruments with real sound. Maya sat down at one and played a single note. It rang out clear and true. She took a breath. Then she started to practice. For the first time in years, she wasn't playing to forget. She was playing to remember, to reclaim, to become herself again. The 8 weeks went by in a blur. Maya fell into a routine that would have seemed impossible 2 months ago. Mornings at the Performing Arts Center, practicing for 2 or 3 hours before the lunch crowd showed up. Afternoons resting or running errands. Evenings at the restaurant playing piano for diners or helping serve on the busiest nights. She was exhausted. Her fingers hurt. Some nights she fell asleep still hearing music in her head. But she was also more alive than she'd felt in years. The showcase was scheduled for a Saturday evening. As the date got closer, Maya started having nightmares. In them, she'd walk out on stage and forget how to play, or the piano would make no sound, or everyone would laugh. She'd wake up with her heart racing, sheets tangled around her legs. "You're going to be fine," her mom kept saying. She'd driven down from their hometown to stay with Maya for the weekend. "You've been practicing nonstop. You know these pieces backward and forward." "Knowing them and performing them are different things," Maya said. She was pacing around her small apartment, too nervous to sit still. "The showcase was in 6 hours. You performed at the restaurant. Dozens of times now. That's different. Those people are there to eat. The music is just background. Tonight, people are coming specifically to watch musicians perform. They're going to judge every note." Her mom caught her by the shoulders, forcing Maya to stop pacing. "Listen to me. You've been preparing for this your whole life. Not just the last 8 weeks. Your whole life. This is who you are. The only difference is now you're finally letting other people see it." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "What if I let everyone down? What if Robert was wrong about me?" "Then you tried. And that's still more than you were doing 2 months ago." Her mom's voice was firm but gentle. "Baby, you've been hiding for so long, playing it safe because you were scared of getting hurt again. But you can't live your whole life that way. Sometimes you have to take the risk." Maya wiped her eyes. Her mom was right. She'd been playing it safe since she left the conservatory, keeping her head down, not wanting anything too much because wanting things led to disappointment. But these past 8 weeks had reminded her of something important. Music wasn't just something she used to do, it was part of who she was. Losing it had been like trying to live without a piece of herself. "Okay," Maya said, taking a deep breath. "Okay, I can do this." "Damn right you can." The Performing Arts Center looked different at night. The lights in the lobby created a warm glow. People in nice clothes were already arriving, checking in at the front desk, finding their seats in the concert hall. Maya stood backstage with the other performers. There were 7 of them total. A violinist who couldn't have been more than 14. A jazz singer in her 60s with kind eyes. A classical guitarist. 2 other pianists. A cellist. And Maya. Everyone seemed so calm, so professional. Maya felt like an imposter in her simple black dress. The other pianists probably had degrees. Real training. They probably didn't have to work as waitresses to pay their bills. Robert found her 20 minutes before the show started. "How are you feeling?" "Like I might throw up," he laughed. "That's normal. I've seen world-class musicians throw up before performances. It means you care. I care too much. That's the problem. There's no such thing as caring too much about something you love." Robert looked at her seriously. "Maya, whatever happens tonight, you've already won. 2 months ago you were hiding your talent. Tonight you're sharing it. That takes courage." The showcase started right at 7. Maya was scheduled 4th, right after the young violinist and before the jazz singer. She watched from the wings as the first performers took the stage. They were all good. Really good. The violinist played with a maturity that seemed impossible for someone so young. The guitarist's fingers moved across the strings like water. Then it was her turn. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next performer is Maya Torres." Maya walked out onto the stage. The lights were bright. She couldn't see individual faces in the audience, just a sea of shadows and the occasional glint of glasses or jewelry. Her legs felt shaky. The piano sat in the center of the stage. A beautiful grand piano polished to a shine. Maya had practiced on it twice during tech rehearsals, but it still seemed too nice for someone like her to touch. She sat down on the bench, adjusted her position, took a breath. The audience was completely quiet, waiting. Maya put her hands on the keys and suddenly the nerves disappeared. Not completely. They were still there, humming under her skin, but they weren't in control anymore. Her hands were. She started with the piece she'd played that first night at the restaurant, the one that had started everything. It felt right to begin there, like acknowledging how far she'd come. Her fingers found the notes easily. Muscle memory took over. But this time she wasn't just playing from memory. She was playing with intention, with feeling. She was telling the story she'd been carrying inside her for years, the story about losing something precious, about grief and struggle and dreams deferred, about working double shifts and choosing between groceries and utilities, about sitting alone in a small apartment, playing a cheap keyboard and wondering if this was all her life would ever be. But the piece didn't end in sadness. It built toward something else. Toward hope. Toward the possibility of reclaiming what had been lost. Toward second chances. As Maya played, she forgot about the audience. Forgot about her nerves. There was just the music and her and the story she was telling with her hands. The first piece ended and immediately she moved into the second. A more complex piece, technically demanding but emotionally powerful. This one was about transformation. About becoming yourself even when the world tries to make you small. Her hands flew across the keys. Fast passages that required perfect precision. Slow sections that needed delicate touch. Loud crescendos that filled the entire hall. Quiet moments that made people lean forward in their seats. Maya poured everything into it. Every hour of practice. Every doubt. Every moment of wondering if she was good enough. Every time someone had made her feel invisible or insignificant. Every dream she'd had to put aside. And something remarkable happened. The music took all of that pain and struggle and transformed it into something beautiful. Something meaningful. Something worth sharing. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the audience erupted. People stood up. The applause was thunderous. Maya opened her eyes, surprised to find them wet with tears. She stood and took a bow, her legs still trembling. As she walked off stage, she could still hear the applause following her. Robert was waiting in the wings, grinning like crazy. "I told you," was all he said. The rest of the showcase passed in a happy blur. The other performers were wonderful. The jazz singer brought the house down. The cellist played something so moving that half the audience was crying by the end. But after the show, when people were mingling in the lobby, Maya found herself surrounded. The young violinist's mother introduced herself and asked if Maya gave lessons. "My daughter could learn so much from you," she said. A man in a suit handed her a business card. He organized corporate events and needed musicians. "Your playing really moved me," he said. "I'd love to work with you." Two different music teachers, approached with questions about her training and her availability. But the conversation that mattered most came from a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, who'd been sitting in the front row. "Maya." "Torres," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Helen Yu. I teach at the Westfield Conservatory." Maya's breath caught. The Westfield Conservatory, one of the best music schools in the region. "Your performance tonight was exceptional. I understand you had to leave your studies some years ago?" "Yes, family circumstances. Medical bills. I couldn't afford to continue," Dr. Yu nodded. "We have a scholarship program for adult learners. Students who had to interrupt their education but want to complete their training. It covers tuition, and there are opportunities for teaching assistantships that provide a stipend. Would you be interested in applying?" Maya couldn't speak for a moment. She just stared at this woman who was offering her something she'd thought was gone forever. Yes. Yes, I'd be very interested." Dr. Yu smiled. "Good. Email me next week and we'll set up a time to discuss the details." After she walked away, Maya just stood there in the middle of the lobby, holding the business card. Her mom appeared at her elbow. "What was that about?" "I think," Maya's voice shook, "I think I might be able to go back to school, to finish what I started." Her mom pulled her into a tight hug right there in the crowded lobby. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So proud." That night, Maya couldn't sleep again, but this time it wasn't from anxiety. It was from excitement, from possibility. She got up around 2 in the morning and sat at her cheap keyboard, the one with the sticky keys and the clicking C. Soon maybe she'd be able to afford a better one. But for now, this was enough. She played quietly, careful not to wake the neighbors. Just simple melodies, letting her fingers wander wherever they wanted to go. 2 months ago, she'd been a waitress who used to play piano. Someone whose dreams had died along with her father. Someone who'd accepted that life was just about getting by. Now she was a musician again, not because anything external had changed, but because she'd finally let herself be seen, let herself try, let herself want something more than she was afraid of failing. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. She'd still have bills to pay. The scholarship might not cover everything. She'd still have to work, still have to hustle, still have to fight for every opportunity, but she'd be fighting for something that mattered. For herself, for the music that lived inside her, for the dreams she'd been too scared to reach for. Maya played until the sun started to rise, golden light creeping through her apartment window. Then she made coffee, texted Robert to thank him again, and started researching what she'd need for the scholarship application. She had work to do. But for the first time in years, it was work that felt like coming home.